So I've been putting out feelers for months now. And this new guy heard my story. He told me about a woman that he traded with while he was moving through California. Described her as built like an ox.
No!
Wait, you said Abby. You're looking for an Abby, right? We picked one up a couple months ago.
Yeah, sure.
No, big girl. Blonde. Arms like mine.
Kaitlyn Dever's portrayal of Abby in Season 2 of The Last of Us is going to diverge from her game counterpart in one significant way. Whereas Abby in the game is muscular and strong, able to go toe-to-toe with most enemies even without weapons, this isn't going to be part of who the show version of Abby is. While Abby's physicality was a central part of the backlash by those who hated the game, in many cases without ever having played it, and even before it released thanks to the leaks, the lack of the same in the show is now a source of controversy among fans of the game. This isn't to equate the two. The outpouring of hate and anger about Part 2 following the leaks was driven in huge part by misinformation, rage bait, and right-wing culture warriors. Videos were released claiming that the game was anti-Christian because the bad guys were a religious cult, which of course doesn't reflect the Seraphite's role in the story at all. That Abby was trans, Lev being the actual trans character, itself still a cause for outrage from some, and more. On the other hand, concerns over Abby's physique being changed come back to the role it plays in her character arc, what it means for the representation of diverse female body types in media, and the perception of kowtowing to the haters. There have been silly reactions to the news, of course. One meme going around quotes Ellie's desperate cry of
Joel, fucking get up!
And follows it with, and he did, implying that there's no way a smaller woman could overpower someone like Joel, which, aside from being a misogynistic assumption, ignores Ellie doing exactly that to David and his men in Part 1, and to WLF, Seraphites and Rattlers alike in Part 2. Not to mention that Joel in this scenario has had his kneecap blown out by a shotgun, and is then beaten to a pulp with a golf club. Not exactly a harmless implement when swung at a human skull. More crucially, as we'll get into, it entirely overlooks that Abby's muscles were of no use in killing Joel, which is actually an important part of how those muscles play into her character arc. Let's start with that. Abby seeks revenge on Joel because he murdered her father at the end of his fight to rescue Ellie from the hospital. She happens upon a scene where this powerful man, who has slaughtered a bunch of fireflies on his way there, has overpowered her father in order to slice his throat. Obsessed with the need for payback, she begins working out and building herself up in order to take on the monster from the hospital. In the flashback with Owen at the aquarium, as well as seeing at the end how her singular focus on Joel destroys their relationship, we see Owen marvelling at her increased strength, and she talks about her weightlifting achievements. 4 years later, the fruits of that effort are apparent in her physique. Except Joel isn't the all-powerful monster she had built up in her mind. He's just a man. An old man who is just trying to survive, and even saves her life in the process. Her rage leads her to torturing and killing him, but it ultimately brings her no peace, and her nightmares persist. It's only when she rescues Lev and Yara, going on a journey that parallels Joel's journey, and even leads to the exact same choice when she chooses the life of a child over the cause for which he must die, that she is finally able to sleep easily. And in the course of that journey, the strength she had built helps her to defeat an actual monster in the hospital basement in the form of the Rat King. The battle she had built up in her mind with Joel didn't come to pass, and his death not only brought her no closure, but also caused a rift between her and her friends, as well as bringing Ellie's vengeance down upon them. While by contrast, the battle with the Rat King allowed her to save Yara and do real good. And in the aftermath, the hospital corridor in her dreams leads to her father smiling, rather than to blood and death. It is possible for the show to reflect a similar character arc without Abby being buff. There are other ways for her obsession to drive her, and for her confrontation with Joel to not live up to the hype, while still allowing for her to find redemption by using her strength for good instead of just revenge. I'm rooting for the show to succeed and to give us a solid adaptation of Part 2's story. I also agree with Neil Druckmann when he says, "We value performance over anything else. We need someone to really capture the essence of those characters. We don't value as much, do they look exactly like their character with their eyebrows or their nose or their body? Whatever it is. It's not nowhere on the priority list, but it's below a bunch of other things that we consider. Looking exactly like a character isn't as important as being able to act out their part well. And it's one of the reasons why fans hating on a casting, or doing their own casting, based purely on looks is so shallow. A shallowness that often leads to cruelty, using even just the reactions to Bella Ramsey as Ellie as an example. She's proven her acting chops in the show's most powerful scenes, and still is critiqued based on looks in an extremely vapid, mean, and often ableist way by the worst kinds of people on the internet. Not to mention those complaining she wasn't hot enough when her character was 14 years old, straight up paedophilic behaviour. Where I differ from Druckmann is that I don't think Abby being muscular is simply a case of looking exactly like the character, rather than being a core aspect of her characterization. Again, I'm rooting for the show to pull the story off, and I do think it can be done without Abby being muscular. It's not the choice itself that makes me wary, but how it's justified. When Druckmann says, "In the game, you have to play both characters, and we need them to play differently. We needed Ellie to feel smaller and kind of maneuver around, and Abby was meant to play more like Joel, in that she's almost like a brute in the way she can physically manhandle certain things. That doesn't play as big of a role in this version of the story, because there's not as much violent action moment to moment. It's more about the drama. I'm not saying there's no action here, it's just, again, different priorities and how you approach it. While I've got no doubt that gameplay considerations played a role in how Abby turned out, suggesting that this is the entirety of the matter appears to ignore how her physique impacts her characterization and arc. As an aside, it's also frustrating that Naughty Dog have previously given more thought to the narrative justification for Joel being unable to dodge in Part 1, something which is a pure gameplay decision based on melee combat balance, than Druckmann appears to give to Abby's strength here. Giving Joel a dodge would fundamentally change how Part 1 plays, but alter nothing about his character. Having Abby be buff or not in the show has a significant impact on her motivations and her journey for the reasons I've already outlined. And Druckmann and Mazin overlooking or omitting this facet to the story again feels like two men being blind to the impact of something in relation to a female character. We saw this in Season 1 with the decision to change Tessa's death to the kiss with the infected, which felt horribly tropey in that it sexualized her end, and felt like an instance where the absence of a woman to point out something that men might not notice impacted the story in a negative way. Similarly, neither Druckmann nor Mazin have anything to say about what Abby's body type might have meant in terms of female representation in entertainment, especially in a world where muscular women still receive backlash, and strong women still tend more towards the Buffy the Vampire Slayer type, their physical strength not taking away from a model's figure.
The truth is, I thought you'd be taller, or bigger muscles and all that.
I'm not going to spend too much time on the notion that Abby's physique is unrealistic, because those who argue this haven't played the game. They point to the difficulty of bulking up in post-apocalyptic scarcity, ignoring that Abby spent 4 years building herself up, while living as a soldier in a community that had a solid supply of nutritious food, including rearing their own livestock and proper gym facilities. She is not scratching around for a morsel of food and magically buff. She worked for it in favourable conditions. Besides which, this is a diversion. The point isn't actually realism. It's a need to police which female body types it's acceptable to represent in our media. In the interview with Entertainment Weekly, Druckmann does address the broader backlash against Part 2. Some of that stuff was borderline traumatic, he said. Although he followed this up with, "But our brand is that we pander to no one. We do what's best for the story, and whatever happens, happens. There's a very particular story we wanted to tell, and we stuck to our guns." The problem is that this does feel like, if not pandering, then a quiet surrender to the backlash. We're in a position now where any kind of representation of any characteristic outside of a narrowly defined norm is met with frenzied cries of woke and DEI. Culture warriors want to punish the inclusion of any character who isn't white and straight, or any woman who goes beyond what they see as a woman's role. There are, hilariously, rival camps of culture warriors on this subject. Some using patriarchal gender norms and rigid beauty standards and trying to vaguely articulate their nonsense as a defense of Western Christian values. Others straight up demanding big jiggly tits they can goon to. The harassment that the developers of The Last of Us Part 2 suffered is a standard tool in the arsenal of those who wish to police what representation is acceptable in video games and entertainment more broadly. And they target not just characters that they want to erase from games, but also demographics that they want to drive from the industry. Even if nothing about the characters of a game provokes obvious outrage, then the presence of black people, women, or LGBTQ+ folks on the development staff will do just as well. These right-wing would-be censors may seem like a minority, albeit an insufferably loud one, but their talking points are being echoed and amplified by the richest man in the world, and the most powerful man in the world. That's not a coincidence. It's part of a deliberate strategy to radicalize gamers into right-wing politics. And the linchpin of their manufactured outrage, the conspiracy theory that women in games are being deliberately turned ugly to undermine masculinity and promote trans ideology, to this day holds up Abby Anderson from The Last of Us Part 2 as their prime example. I don't think that there was any intent to legitimize any of this in the changes to Abby, nor do I think that changes in adaptation should be weighed up based on who might see them as a concession. Merely that, in not even acknowledging why people might be disappointed in the change, it suggests that they don't recognise the impact the character had in the first place. Again, I hope that's not the case. Craig Mazin has so far delivered one of the most solid video game adaptations we have in the first season, and the writing, performances, cinematography, score and more have been absolutely stellar. I'm rooting for Season 2 to deliver more of the same. And even with the change, for Abby's journey on the show to be as compelling as it was in the game. I just hope that the showrunners don't lose sight of why anything they might change was important to fans of the game, and concerns over those changes are more than just purism or a knee-jerk rejection of change, and so in adapting they don't lose sight of what it's all about. I'll be reacting to and discussing the show with guests weekly when it airs, and you can check out the Last of Us spoilercast right here on the channel. Until then, what are your thoughts? What's your reaction to Kaitlyn Dever's Abby not being buff? What are your concerns and hopes for Season 2? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a like and consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. Like the video that's just popped up, which YouTube thinks you should watch next. This is a Patreon and member supported channel, so if you want to become a member and unlock custom badges and emojis, early access to my videos, and your name in the credits, then click the join button below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.